The autumn breeze rustled through the maple trees as Lily Wong hurried across the university quad. She was late again. Not that it mattered much for most classes, but Professor Davis made a point of locking the door exactly 5 minutes after the lecture began. Music Appreciation 101. Wasn't even a class she wanted to take. Just another general education requirement she needed to check off for her computer science degree. Lily reached the Fine Arts building and took the stairs 2 at a time, her backpack thumping against her spine. She could hear the faint sound of a piano growing louder as she approached room 318. The door was still open. Thank goodness. She slipped inside and found a seat in the back row, trying to become invisible as 30 pairs of eyes turned to look at her. Professor Davis, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and perpetually furrowed eyebrows, paused mid-sentence. "Nice of you to join us, Ms. Wong," Lily said quietly, sinking lower in her seat. Lily Wong. "Well, Ms. Wong, since you've decided to grace us with your presence, perhaps you'd like to share your musical background with the class?" "We were just going around introducing ourselves." Lily felt her cheeks grow hot. She hated being put on the spot. "I don't really have one," she mumbled, staring at her lap. "Everyone has some relationship with music," Professor Davis insisted, crossing his arms. "Did you play an instrument in school? Sing in choir? Anything?" A few students turned around again, curious. Lily wished she could disappear into the floor. "I took piano lessons as a kid," she finally admitted, "but I stopped years ago." The truth was more complicated, but no one needed to know that. No one needed to know about the years at the Beijing Central Conservatory, the competitions, the pressure, or why she'd walked away from it all. "How many years?" Professor Davis pressed. 7, Lily said, then quickly added, "But I barely remember anything now." The professor made a note on his clipboard and moved on to the next student. Lily let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. For the next hour, Professor Davis lectured about the Romantic period in classical music, playing recordings and pointing out themes and motifs that Lily could identify before he even mentioned them. Old habits died hard. She had trained herself not to react, not to show any sign that she understood music at a level far beyond this introductory course. "Before you leave today," Professor Davis announced, as students began packing up their things, "I need to discuss the departmental showcase coming up in 4 weeks. As I mentioned in the syllabus, part of your grade in this course involves participation in this event." Groans rippled through the classroom. Lily felt a knot forming in her stomach. "Most of you will work in groups to create educational displays about different musical periods," he continued, "but I'll also need a few students to perform. Nothing major, just a piece or two to demonstrate what we've been learning." Lily kept her eyes down and gathered her books, planning to slip out quickly once he finished. "Ms. Wong." She froze halfway out of her seat. "Please stay for a moment after class." The knot in Lily's stomach tightened as she watched her classmates file out, some shooting her sympathetic glances. When the last student left, Professor Davis gestured for her to come to the front of the room. "I'm looking for students with some musical background to perform at the showcase," he said without preamble. "Since you've had piano training, you'd be perfect." "I really don't play anymore," Lily protested, her voice barely audible. "I'm very rusty." "This is a university requirement, Miss Wong. Everyone contributes according to their abilities." He turned to a shelf behind his desk and pulled out a folder of sheet music. "Besides, it will be good for you." Many students find these performances help them reconnect with music. I've selected Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 for you." Lily's blood ran cold. She knew the piece intimately, one of the most technically demanding piano concertos ever written. Professional pianists spent months, sometimes years, perfecting it. The piece that had been her undoing at her last public performance 7 years ago. "That's impossible," she blurted out. "I mean, that's a professional concert pianist piece. I took childhood lessons. I can barely play for Elise anymore." Professor Davis gave her a stern look over his glasses. "Perhaps I'm being optimistic about your abilities, but I believe in setting high expectations. If it proves too challenging, we can discuss alternatives next week. But I'd like you to at least try." He handed her the music sheets. Lily took them mechanically, her fingers remembering the feel of these very passages, the hours spent working through the complex phrases until her hands cramped. The piano practice rooms in the basement are available to music students from 6 a.m. to midnight, Professor Davis said, already turning back to his desk. I've added you to the access list. I suggest you start immediately if you're as rusty as you claim. I can't do this, Lily said, trying one more time. Please assign me something else. Anything else. Ms. Wong. Professor Davis sighed. Part of education is pushing beyond your comfort zone. 4 weeks is plenty of time to prepare a simplified version. I'm not expecting perfection, just effort. Defeated, Lily nodded and turned to leave. The heavy sheets of music clutched to her chest. And Ms. Wong, he called after her. Try not to be late to my class again. Lily walked out into the hallway in a daze. A few music students were gathered nearby and she caught fragments of their conversation. Did I hear that right? Davis assigned her Rach 3? Poor thing. That's just cruel. She'll crash and burn for sure. Nobody springs Rachmaninoff on a beginner. Lily hurried past them, blinking back tears. They had no idea who she was or what she could do. Neither did Professor Davis, that was the problem. In the safety of her dorm room, Lily tossed the music sheets onto her desk and collapsed onto her bed. Her roommate, Zoe, looked up from her laptop. Rough day? She asked. The worst, Lily groaned. My music appreciation professor is forcing me to play at some showcase. That doesn't sound so bad. What's the piece? Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto. Zoe whistled. Isn't that like super hard? Even for professionals? Exactly. Lily stared at the ceiling. He thinks I just had some childhood lessons. He has no idea what he's asking. Why don't you just tell him the truth? Zoe suggested, spinning around in her desk chair. Lily shook her head firmly. No way. The truth was complicated. Lily had been a prodigy, recognized at age 4 when she reproduced a complex melody her mother had been practicing. By 6, she was performing Chopin. By 10, she was winning international competitions and being hailed as China's next great classical pianist. Then came the Beijing International Piano Competition when she was 12. The pressure had been immense. Sponsors, recording contracts, her parents' expectations, her country's pride. And she'd chosen Rachmaninoff's Third for her final performance. Halfway through the most technically demanding passage, she had frozen. The notes she had played thousands of times simply vanished from her mind. The silence in the concert hall had been deafening. She'd run off the stage in tears and refused to touch a piano in public ever again. Her parents had eventually accepted her decision, moving to America for her father's job and allowing Lily to pursue a practical education. But they never knew that she still played, late at night with headphones in empty churches when she could find them, keeping her gift alive but safely hidden from the world that had once crushed her. So what will you do? Zoe asked, breaking into her thoughts. Lily sat up and looked at the sheet music on her desk. I don't know. Fake a broken arm? Drop the class? Transfer schools? Or you could just play badly on purpose, Zoe suggested. Just well enough to pass but bad enough that he won't ask you again. The thought of deliberately playing poorly made Lily's fingers twitch in protest. Music had been her voice, her truth for too long. I'll figure something out, she said. The next day after classes, Lily found herself standing outside the basement practice rooms. She didn't know why she'd come. Habit, maybe. Or the pull of the piano that had never really left her. The hallway was quiet, most students still in afternoon classes. Room B7 was empty, a worn upright piano waiting inside. Lily set her backpack down and closed the door behind her. The piano was nothing like the concert grands she'd once performed on, but it was well maintained. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down, feeling their smooth, familiar shape. Just to see, she whispered to herself, just to remember. She placed her hands in position and began the opening notes of Rachmaninoff's Third. The melody flowed from her fingers as if the 7-year gap had never existed. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget. The rise and fall of the phrases, the complex rhythms, the emotional landscape of the piece. Lily played softly at first, then with growing confidence as the music carried her away. She didn't need the sheet music. It was all still there, embedded in her muscles and memory. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice the door opening slightly, didn't see the wide-eyed janitor pausing in his rounds, listening in amazement before quietly pulling the door closed again. When Lily finally stopped playing, an hour had passed. Her heart was pounding, but not with anxiety, with the rush that came from reconnecting with something she loved. For a moment, she considered marching back to Professor Davis and showing him exactly who she was. But the old fear crept back in. What if it happened again? What if she froze in front of everyone at the showcase? The memory of that silent concert hall still haunted her. No, she decided. She would find another way out of this. She would convince Professor Davis that she couldn't possibly learn this piece in time, that she needed something simpler. She would protect the secret she'd kept for 7 years. As Lily packed up her things, she didn't realize that her carefully constructed walls had already begun to crumble. The music had escaped into the world again, and soon everyone would know what she had been hiding all along. For the next 3 days, Lily avoided the practice rooms. She spent hours in the library instead, researching university policies on course requirements and medical exemptions. There had to be a way out of this situation that didn't involve exposing her past or confronting her fears. "You look terrible," Zoe commented on Thursday night, watching Lily shuffle into their dorm room and collapse onto her bed. "When's the last time you slept properly?" "I don't even know anymore," Lily mumbled into her pillow. Dark circles had formed under her eyes, and her normally neat ponytail was coming loose. "I've been trying to find a loophole in the course requirements." "Any luck?" "None. I need a doctor's note for a medical exemption, and I'm not actually injured." Lily rolled onto her back and stared at the ceiling. "I could drop the class, but it's past the deadline, so it would show up as a withdrawal on my transcript. And I'd still need to take another arts credit later." Zoe closed her laptop and turned fully toward Lily. "Can I ask you something? Why is this such a big deal? So you play the piano in front of some people. Even if you mess up, who cares? It's just a class requirement." Lily was quiet for so long that Zoe thought she might have fallen asleep. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I used to be good, Zoe, really good." "Okay." Lily sat up and hugged her knees to her chest. "Not just took lessons as a kid good. I was a prodigy." The words felt strange in her mouth. She hadn't talked about this with anyone since coming to America. Even her college application essays had carefully avoided any mention of her musical background. From age 4, my life was piano. Morning, afternoon, evening, practice, lessons, competitions. By the time I was 10, I was performing with orchestras across Asia. Lily's fingers unconsciously mimicked playing as she spoke. "My parents moved to Beijing so I could study at the Central Conservatory. Everyone said I was going to be the next Lang Lang or Yu Jia Wang." "Whoa." Zoe's eyes widened. "That's intense. It was my whole identity. The girl who could play anything after hearing it once. The youngest finalist in the Shanghai International Piano Competition. Little Lily with the big talent." She gave a sad smile. "My mother has a whole room filled with trophies and newspaper clippings back in China. So what happened?" Zoe asked gently. Lily took a deep breath. "The Beijing International Young Artists Competition happened. I was 12, and it was the biggest opportunity of my career. Scouts from record labels, conservatories, concert halls, everyone was there. I chose Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 for my final performance." "The same piece your professor assigned you?" Lily nodded. "It's considered one of the most technically challenging pieces in piano literature. I'd been practicing it for a year. I knew every note, every dynamic marking. It was perfect in rehearsal." She paused, the memories washing over her with surprising intensity. "I walked onto that stage in my red dress, sat at this enormous Steinway, and began to play. Everything was fine for the first few minutes. And then," Lily's voice caught, "I just stopped. My mind went completely blank. I couldn't remember what came next. It was like the music had just disappeared from my brain." "Stage fright?" Zoe asked, something deeper. "A complete shutdown." Lily closed her eyes, reliving the terrible silence that had filled the concert hall. "I tried to start again 3 times. Each time I froze in the exact same spot. Finally, I just ran off the stage." She could still hear the murmurs from the audience, see her mother's devastated face, feel the hot tears streaming down her cheeks as she hid in a storage closet backstage. The next day, my picture was in the papers, not celebrating a victory but documenting a very public failure. "Piano prodigy's career ends in tears." They called it the meltdown heard around the music world. I never played in public again. "That's rough," Zoe said, moving to sit beside Lily on the bed. "But you were just a kid. Nobody would hold that against you now. You don't understand how the classical music world works. That moment defined me. After the competition, I refused to touch a piano for months. I stopped eating, barely slept. My parents were worried sick. Finally, they agreed to let me quit. My dad took a job offer in America, and we moved here when I was 13. We all pretended like that part of my life never happened. But you still play, Zoe pointed out. I've seen your headphones and that electronic keyboard you keep under your bed. Lily nodded slowly. I can't not play. It's like breathing for me. But I only play for myself now. No pressure, no audience, no expectations. And that's the way I need it to be. And now Professor Davis has accidentally assigned you the exact piece that traumatized you. That's some seriously bad luck. The universe has a cruel sense of humor, Lily agreed. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Lily's confession hanging between them. So what will you do? Zoe finally asked. Lily sighed. I don't know. But I've got class with Professor Davis tomorrow and he's going to ask about my progress. I need to convince him to assign me something else, anything else. The next day, Lily arrived at music appreciation early, determined to speak with Professor Davis before class. She found him organizing sheet music at his desk. Professor Davis, can I talk to you about the showcase assignment? He looked up, seemingly surprised to see her there before class. Ms. Wong, yes, of course. How's the Rachmaninoff coming along? That's what I wanted to discuss. I really don't think I can do it justice with only a few weeks of practice. Could I maybe play something simpler? Even a beginner piece would be. Ms. Wong, he interrupted. The purpose of this assignment isn't perfection. It's effort and growth. I'm not expecting a concert-level performance, but this particular piece is one of the finest examples of romantic period piano composition, he finished for her, which is why I selected it. Even a simplified version will demonstrate the key elements we're studying in class. Lily felt her anxiety rising. Please, Professor Davis, any other piece? I'll work twice as hard on it, I promise. He studied her for a moment, his expression softening slightly. You seem unusually distressed about this assignment. Is there something specific about this piece that's troubling you? This was her chance to tell him everything. About her past as a prodigy, about her public failure, about how this very piece had broken her. But the words wouldn't come. 7 years of hiding her true self couldn't be undone in a moment. I'm just not as good as you think I am, she said instead. I don't want to embarrass myself, Professor Davis sighed. All right. I can see you're genuinely concerned. How about this? Play what you've worked on so far after class today. If it's truly beyond your abilities, we'll find an alternative. It was both exactly what she wanted and exactly what she feared. If she played badly on purpose, she'd get a simpler piece. But deliberately playing poorly felt like a betrayal of her gift. And if she played well, she'd be right back where she started. Okay, she agreed reluctantly as students began filing into the classroom. Throughout the lecture, Lily barely heard a word Professor Davis said. Her mind was racing, trying to decide what to do. Play terribly and get out of this mess? Play her best and risk opening doors she'd kept firmly closed for years? Or find some middle ground? Good enough to satisfy him, but not so good that he'd push her into the spotlight. When class ended, students filed out quickly, eager to start their weekend. Lily remained in her seat, her heart pounding as if she were about to walk onto the competition stage again. Ready, Ms. Wong? Professor Davis asked, gesturing toward the upright piano in the corner of the classroom. Slowly, Lily approached the instrument. She sat on the bench, adjusting its height automatically, a habit from her competition days. Professor Davis handed her the sheet music, but she set it aside. If she was going to do this, she wouldn't need it. Whenever you're ready, he said, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. Lily placed her hands on the keys and took a deep breath. She had decided. She would play just a small section, play it well, but not extraordinarily so. Good enough to show respect for the music, but not so brilliantly that he would suspect her true abilities. She began the opening bars of the concerto, intentionally keeping the tempo moderate and the dynamics restrained. It was like trying to walk in slow motion. Her fingers naturally wanted to dance across the keys with the speed and expression ingrained through thousands of hours of practice. Professor Davis watched her intently, his eyebrows rising slightly as she played. After about 2 minutes, she deliberately fumbled a difficult passage and stopped. That's all I've worked on so far, she lied. There was a long pause before Professor Davis spoke. Ms. Wong, I think I may have underestimated your abilities. Lily's stomach tightened. Had she not been careful enough? Had her true skill shown through despite her efforts to hide it? You have a natural feel for the instrument, he continued. Your technique needs refinement, certainly, but there's something in your interpretation that's intriguing. Does this mean I can play something else? Lily asked hopefully. Professor Davis stroked his chin thoughtfully. Actually, I think we should stick with the Rachmaninoff. You're further along than I expected. With focused practice, you could prepare a simplified version quite effectively. This was the opposite of what Lily wanted to hear. But I understand your nervousness, but I've been teaching for 20 years, Ms. Wong. I know potential when I see it. He glanced at his watch. I have a faculty meeting now, but keep working on the piece. We'll check in again next week. And just like that, he was gone, leaving Lily alone at the piano with her thoughts. She had tried to hide her talent and somehow only convinced him that she had even more potential than he initially believed. As she gathered her things, Lily noticed a figure standing in the doorway. Mr. Chen, the elderly janitor she had seen around campus. That was beautiful playing, he said in Mandarin, surprising her. Why did you stop? Lily responded in the same language, grateful for the familiar sounds of her mother tongue. I was just demonstrating for my professor. Mr. Chen smiled knowingly. I heard you in the practice room the other day. You played much better then. Lily froze. Someone had heard her. Her secret wasn't as safe as she thought. Don't worry, he continued, seeing her expression. Your secret is safe with me. But may I ask why someone with your gift pretends to be less than she is? It was a question that struck at the heart of everything Lily had been wrestling with for years. It's complicated, she said softly. Most worthwhile things are. Mr. Chen nodded sagely. My wife was a violinist with the Shanghai Symphony Orchestra before we moved here. She always said that true talent doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It just finds other ways to express itself. He began wiping down the chalkboard, seemingly content to let the conversation end there. Lily shouldered her backpack and headed for the door, then paused. Mr. Chen, the practice rooms. When are they least crowded? Early mornings, he replied without turning around. Before 7 a.m., no one is there. I unlock them at 5:30, Lily nodded. Thank you. As she walked across the autumn campus, leaves crunching beneath her feet, Lily felt something shifting inside her. The walls she had built around her talent were beginning to crack, letting in slivers of light. She wasn't ready to step back into the spotlight, wasn't ready to embrace the identity she had run from for so long. But maybe, just maybe, she was ready to stop running. The next morning at 5:45 a.m., Lily slipped into practice room B7 with her coffee and a determination she hadn't felt in years. She had 3 weeks until the showcase, 3 weeks to decide who she really wanted to be. For the next 2 weeks, Lily fell into a new routine. Each morning, she woke at 5:15 a.m., slipped out of her dorm room while Zoe was still asleep, and hurried across the quiet campus to the music building. Mr. Chen would nod silently as she passed him in the hallway, the practice room keys already in the door of B7. In those early morning hours, with sunlight gradually filtering through the basement windows, Lily reconnected with the person she used to be. At first, she played cautiously as if testing thin ice, but as the days passed, she allowed herself to dive deeper into the music, playing with the passion and technical brilliance she had once been known for. Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto was coming back to her, not as the source of her greatest humiliation, but as an old friend with whom she was becoming reacquainted. She worked through the difficult passage where she had frozen years ago, playing it over and over until her fingers moved through it automatically, until the memory of that silent concert hall began to fade. Mr. Chen would sometimes linger outside the door, listening. Occasionally, he brought her tea in a thermos or left oranges by her backpack. They rarely spoke, but his quiet presence felt like permission to be herself again. In her regular classes, Lily was exhausted. She nodded off during lectures and struggled to focus on assignments. But for the first time in years, she felt alive in a way that had nothing to do with grades or career plans or the careful life she had constructed for herself. You look terrible, but somehow happier, Zoe commented one evening as they ate dinner in the cafeteria. Are you secretly dating someone or something? Lily laughed and shook her head. No, nothing like that. I've just been working on the piano piece. Getting up early to practice. How's it going? Zoe asked, stabbing at her salad. Lily hesitated. It's good, actually. Better than I expected. So you're going to play it? The Rachmaninoff? I'm still figuring things out, Lily said carefully. But I'm practicing at least. What she didn't say was that she still hadn't decided how she would play at the showcase. Would she hold back, playing well enough to satisfy the assignment but not well enough to draw attention? Or would she finally step back into the light and show who she truly was? The question followed her everywhere, even into her dreams where she alternated between triumphant performances and humiliating failures. 2 days before her scheduled check-in with Professor Davis, Lily arrived at practice room B7 to find a note taped to the door. Dean Williams and faculty touring facilities at 6 a.m. Practice rooms closed until 8 a.m. Administration. Lily checked her watch, 5:40 a.m. She had been counting on these 2 hours of practice. With her afternoon packed with classes and a group project meeting, she wouldn't have another chance to play until evening. Frustrated, she turned to leave and nearly bumped into Mr. Chen. No piano today? He asked in Mandarin. She showed him the note. The dean's yearly inspection. They never actually come to the basement. But the note must go on all doors. He looked thoughtful for a moment, then said, "Follow me." Curious, Lily followed the elderly janitor through a maze of basement corridors she hadn't explored before. They climbed a narrow staircase and emerged in a part of the music building she didn't recognize. The old recital hall, Mr. Chen explained, using his keys to open a large wooden door. They built the new performance center 5 years ago, so this is only used for storage now. He flipped a switch, and soft lights illuminated a small auditorium with about 100 seats sloping down toward a stage. And on that stage sat a magnificent grand piano, its black surface gleaming even under the dim lights. A Steinway concert grand, Mr. Chen said proudly. They couldn't move it to the new building because of some structural issue with the elevators. So it stays here, lonely but perfect. Lily approached the instrument with reverence. It had been years since she'd played on a piano of this quality. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down, feeling their perfect weight and balance. "No one will disturb you here," Mr. Chen said, heading back toward the door. "The dean certainly won't climb these stairs. I'll come get you before your first class." When he was gone, Lily sat on the bench and adjusted its height. The action of the keys was different from the upright she had been practicing on, more responsive with greater dynamic range. She began to play, and the rich sound filled the empty hall, wrapping around her like an old embrace. For the next hour and a half, Lily lost herself in the music. She played through the entire concerto from memory, no longer holding back or hesitating. Her fingers flew across the keys in the virtuosic passages, drawing out the melody in the lyrical sections with tender expressivity. In this forgotten room with no one to hear her, she allowed herself to be the pianist she had once been destined to become. Or so she thought. When she finished the piece, hitting the final triumphant chord, the sound was suddenly joined by applause, a single person clapping slowly from the back of the dark auditorium. Lily's hands froze above the keys, her heart racing with panic. Someone had been listening. A figure moved down the center aisle toward the stage. As he came into the light, Lily recognized Professor Davis. "I thought I was hearing things," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the empty hall. "I was cutting through the old wing to avoid the dean's entourage when I heard piano music. Quite extraordinary piano music, in fact." Lily couldn't speak. Her secret, the one she had guarded for 7 years, was now exposed. "You've been hiding something from me, Ms. Wong," Professor Davis said, climbing the steps to the stage. "From all of us, I suspect." "I can explain," Lily managed to say, though she had no idea how to explain any of this. "I think you'd better," he agreed, pulling up a chair near the piano. "Starting with why one of the most technically accomplished pianists I've ever heard is pretending to be a beginner in my class." Lily's hands trembled as she clasped them in her lap. "I didn't mean to deceive you. I don't play publicly anymore. Yet here you are, playing a notoriously difficult concerto from memory with professional-level technique." He leaned forward. "Who are you, really?" The question hung in the air between them. Who was she, really? The child prodigy whose future had seemed so bright? The traumatized girl who had run away from that life? The college student trying to be normal? All of these and none of these. Taking a deep breath, Lily told him everything. About growing up as a musical prodigy, about the competition in Beijing, about her very public failure playing this exact concerto, about moving to America and burying her musical identity. "I haven't played for anyone except myself in 7 years," she concluded. "Until now, I guess." Professor Davis was quiet for a long moment. "That explains a lot," he finally said. "Your posture at the piano, your natural phrasing even when you were trying to play simply for me, those aren't things you can fake or forget." "So what happens now?" Lily asked quietly. "That depends," he replied. "What do you want to happen?" It was a simple question with a complicated answer. Lily ran her fingers lightly over the keys again, feeling their familiar contours. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me wants to keep hiding. It's safer that way. No expectations, no pressure, no chance of failing again. And the other part?" Lily looked at the empty seat stretching back into the darkness. "The other part misses it. The connection with the audience, the feeling of sharing something beautiful. Music was my voice for so long. Sometimes I feel like I've been whispering when I used to sing." Professor Davis nodded thoughtfully. "The showcase is in 9 days. You're scheduled to perform the third movement of the Rachmaninoff. Based on what I just heard, you could play the entire concerto flawlessly tomorrow if you wanted to." "Technically, maybe," Lily agreed. "But mentally, I don't know if I'm ready to perform again. What if it happens again? What if I freeze? That's a risk all performers take every time they step on stage," Professor Davis said gently. "Even the greatest musicians in the world face that fear. The question isn't whether the fear exists, but whether the music matters enough to face it." His words resonated with something deep inside Lily. She had been hiding for so long, not just from the possibility of failure, but from the full expression of who she was. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Of course." Professor Davis stood. "Take a few days. Whatever you decide. Whether to play as the beginner you've been pretending to be or as the accomplished pianist you clearly are, I'll support your choice." He started to leave, then turned back. "But Lily, for what it's worth, I think the world is poorer when genuine talent remains hidden. Sometimes our greatest gifts come with the heaviest burdens. But that doesn't mean we should set them down permanently." After he left, Lily remained at the piano, playing softly as the morning light grew stronger through the high windows of the old recital hall. The burden of her secret had been lifted, but a new weight had taken its place, the weight of choice. When Mr. Chen came to tell her it was time for class, he found her still at the piano, though she wasn't playing anymore. "Is everything all right?" he asked, noting her troubled expression. "Professor Davis heard me play," she said simply. "He knows everything now." Mr. Chen nodded as if he had expected this. "And this is bad news?" "I don't know what it is." Lily gathered her things slowly. "He's giving me a choice about how to play at the showcase. I can keep pretending or stop pretending." Mr. Chen said with a small smile. "The hardest choice of all, to be yourself or not." As Lily walked to class, she felt as though she were standing at a crossroads. One path led back to the safe, anonymous life she had carefully constructed. The other led toward a future filled with both tremendous possibility and tremendous risk. 9 days until the showcase. 9 days to decide who she really was and who she wanted to become. The week before the showcase crawled by in a fog of indecision. During the day, Lily went through the motions of normal college life, attending classes, working on assignments, eating meals with Zoe. But her mind was elsewhere, circling around the choice that Professor Davis had given her. "You've been weird all week," Zoe said on Friday night as they walked back from dinner, "and you're still not sleeping." "What's going on?" Lily had been avoiding this conversation, but she was too exhausted to keep deflecting. "Professor Davis found out about my past," she admitted. "He heard me playing in the old recital hall." "Oh." Zoe was quiet for a moment. "So what happens now?" "He's letting me decide how to play at the showcase. I can either keep pretending to be average or play the way I used to play." They reached their dorm building and paused outside, neither wanting to continue the conversation in the crowded lobby. "Isn't that good news?" Zoe asked, sitting on a bench near the entrance. "You don't have to hide anymore." Lily sat beside her, pulling her jacket tighter against the evening chill. "I don't know. Part of me wants to just get through the showcase without drawing attention. Play well enough to pass the assignment, but not well enough to become the piano girl again. And the other part? Lily smiled faintly. The other part keeps imagining what it would feel like to really play again, to show what I can do without holding back. She looked up at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. I've been hiding for so long I'm not sure I remember how to be visible. For what it's worth, Zoe said, I think you'd be amazing. But I get why it's scary. It's not just about being scared, Lily tried to explain. If I decide to play at my full ability, I'm not just making a choice about one performance. I'm making a choice about who I am, about whether music is going to be part of my life again in a real way. You talk about it like it would be a bad thing, Zoe observed. But every time you come back from practice, even exhausted, you seem, I don't know, more alive somehow. Lily couldn't argue with that. The past weeks of reconnecting with the piano had awakened something in her that had been dormant for years. 4 days left to decide, she sighed, standing up. Let's go inside. I've got a physics problem set due Monday that I've been avoiding. The next morning, Lily received an unexpected email from Professor Davis, Ms. Wong. I've been thinking about our conversation in the old recital hall. Regardless of how you choose to play at the showcase, I believe you might benefit from speaking with someone who has faced similar challenges in her musical career. Dr. Lin from our piano faculty has agreed to meet with you today at 2 p.m. in her studio, room 415. She came to music later in life after a different career path, and her perspective might be valuable to you. This is entirely optional, of course, but I encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity. Professor Davis. Lily stared at the email for a long time. She had deliberately avoided the piano faculty since coming to the university, worried that they might somehow recognize her name from her competition days. But something about Professor Davis's suggestion felt right. She needed to talk to someone who might understand what she was going through. At 2 p.m. sharp, Lily knocked on the door of room 415. A warm voice called, "Come in." Dr. Lin was a small woman in her 50s with short salt and pepper hair and round glasses. Her studio was cozy, filled with plants and artwork alongside the expected music books and 2 grand pianos. "You must be Lily," she said, standing to greet her. "Thomas, Professor Davis, has told me a bit about your situation. Please sit down." Lily took a seat on the couch, immediately noticing the framed music awards and concert programs on the walls. Dr. Lin followed her gaze. "An unusual path, mine," she said with a smile. "I was a physician for 15 years before returning to music professionally." "Really?" Lily was surprised. "But these awards, you were clearly very accomplished." "I was a promising young pianist," Dr. Lin acknowledged. "Studied at Juilliard, won some competitions. Then I developed severe tendinitis in both wrists during my final year. The doctor said I might never play at a high level again." "That's terrible," Lily said softly. "At the time, it felt like the end of the world," Dr. Lin agreed. "Music had been my entire identity. So I made a new one. Went to medical school, became a hand specialist actually. Helped other musicians with injuries. But you came back to music," Lily pointed out. Dr. Lin nodded, sitting at one of the pianos and playing a few gentle chords. 15 years later, after a lot of physical therapy and a different approach to technique. "But I didn't come back the same person. The young pianist who left and the mature musician who returned were 2 different people." She looked at Lily thoughtfully. "Professor Davis tells me you were something of a prodigy." Lily nodded, unsure how much to share. "And you stopped performing after a difficult experience," Dr. Lin continued. "Now you're faced with a choice about whether to reveal your true abilities." "Yes," Lily said, relieved that she didn't have to explain everything. "I don't know what to do. May I ask you something? When you play now, in those early morning sessions that Thomas mentioned, how does it feel?" Lily thought about those quiet hours in the practice room. "It feels right. Like I'm finally speaking my own language again after years of pretending I didn't know how." "And what exactly are you afraid will happen if you play your best at the showcase?" This question was harder. Lily stared at her hands. "That I'll freeze again. That I'll fail publicly. That everyone will have expectations for me that I can't live up to." "Those are understandable fears," Dr. Lin said gently, "but there's something else I'm hearing beneath them. You're not just afraid of failing, you're afraid of succeeding." The observation hit Lily like a physical force. "What do you mean?" "If you play poorly or even just adequately, you can continue living exactly as you have been. Safe, hidden. But if you play brilliantly, as you're capable of doing, everything changes. People will see you, really see you. Your gift will create obligations, opportunities, choices. The path ahead will be more complicated. It was true, Lily realized. She wasn't just afraid of another humiliating moment on stage. She was afraid of what would happen if there was no humiliating moment, if instead she triumphed. I spent 15 years hiding from my musical self, Dr. Lin continued. Not because I couldn't play at all, but because I couldn't play the way I had before at the level I had before. My pride wouldn't let me be anything less than what I had been. It took me years to understand that I was missing the point entirely. What was the point? Lily asked. That music isn't about being the best or the most perfect. It's about communication, about expressing something true from one human heart to another. Dr. Lin moved to sit beside Lily on the couch. When you played as a child before all the pressure and expectations, what did you love about it? Lily closed her eyes, remembering. The way it made me feel, like I could say things with music that I didn't have words for, and the way it made other people feel, seeing their faces when I played something beautiful. That's still available to you, Dr. Lin said quietly, no matter how you decide to play at the showcase. But ask yourself this. Will you be communicating something true if you deliberately play below your abilities? Or will you just be adding another layer to the walls you've built around yourself? They talked for another hour, about music and identity, about fear and growth, about the different paths a life can take. Dr. Lin didn't tell Lily what choice to make, but she helped her see the decision more clearly. As Lily was leaving, Dr. Lin said, "Whatever you decide, I hope you'll come see me again. We have a lot in common, you and I." For the first time since Professor Davis had discovered her secret, Lily felt a sense of peace. She still didn't know what she would do at the showcase, but the question no longer filled her with dread. The next 3 days passed in a blur of classes and practice sessions. Lily worked on both versions of her performance, the simplified one that would satisfy the assignment without drawing attention, and the full, virtuosic interpretation that represented her true capabilities. She would decide which to play when the moment came. The day of the showcase arrived cloudy and cool. The Fine Arts building buzzed with activity as students set up displays about different musical periods and rehearsed their performances. The event was open to the entire campus community, and posters advertising it had been up for weeks. Lily arrived early, dressed simply in black pants and a blue sweater. She had deliberately chosen not to tell her parents about the showcase. If this went badly, she didn't want them to witness it. If it went well, that was a bridge she wasn't ready to cross yet. Backstage, she paced nervously, going over both versions of the piece in her head. The showcase had begun, and she could hear the muffled sounds of the audience and the first few student performances. Professor Davis found her there, looking almost as nervous as she felt. "Have you decided?" he asked quietly. Lily took a deep breath. "I think so." "Whatever happens out there," he said, "remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling afraid and doing the thing anyway." A student aide appeared at the door. "5 minutes, Ms. Wong." Lily nodded, her heart pounding. 7 years ago, she had run off a stage in tears, humiliated and broken. That moment had defined her for so long. Now she had a chance to redefine herself, not by erasing that failure, but by choosing not to let it have the final word. As she walked toward the stage, she heard Professor Davis announcing her. "Our next performer is Lily Wong, playing the third movement of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3. The spotlight felt hot and bright as she crossed to the grand piano at center stage. The auditorium was fuller than she had expected, with at least 200 people watching her. She caught a glimpse of Zoe giving her a thumbs up from the third row, and Mr. Chen standing at the back, a small smile on his face. Lily sat at the bench and adjusted its height. Her hands were trembling slightly as she positioned them over the keys. The moment of decision had arrived. Which version would she play? Who was she going to be? She took one more deep breath, looked out at the expectant faces in the audience, and began to play. The first notes filled the auditorium, tentative and measured. Lily played carefully, her fingers moving through the simplified version she had prepared as a backup. The audience listened politely, students fulfilling their attendance requirement, faculty evaluating her technique, A few genuine music lovers enjoying the piece. She made it through the first page of music without incident. A small voice in her head telling her to continue this way, to stay safe, to remain invisible. It would be enough to satisfy Professor Davis. No one would question her. No one would expect anything more. But as she turned to the second page, something shifted inside her. The music felt hollow, a pale imitation of what it could be, of what she could be. Dr. Lin's words echoed in her mind. Will you be communicating something true if you deliberately play below your abilities? Without making a conscious decision, Lily's fingers began to move differently. The tempo increased, the dynamics expanded, and the simplified arrangement gave way to Rachmaninoff's full, complex composition. It was as if her hands remembered what her mind had tried to forget, the joy of letting the music flow through her without restraint. The audience stirred. This was not the performance of a college freshman with childhood piano lessons. This was something else entirely. Lily closed her eyes, surrendering to the piece. The passage where she had frozen 7 years ago approached, the notorious section that had once broken her on the competition stage. Her heart raced as her fingers flew toward it, muscle memory guiding them through the intricate patterns. For a split second, doubt crept in, but then she pushed through, her hands dancing across the keys with precision and passion. There was no hesitation this time, no paralyzing blankness, just music, powerful, joyful, alive. Lily opened her eyes, a smile spreading across her face as she realized what had happened. She had faced her greatest fear and moved beyond it. The moment no longer had power over her. The final section of the movement built to its triumphant conclusion. Lily played with all the technical brilliance and emotional depth she possessed, her body swaying with the music, her face transformed by the pure pleasure of creating something beautiful. When she struck the final chord, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then the auditorium erupted. People rose to their feet, applauding wildly. Some were shouting, "Bravo!" Others looked stunned, turning to their neighbors in disbelief. Professor Davis stood at the side of the stage, beaming with pride and something that looked like vindication. Lily remained at the piano, momentarily overwhelmed. 7 years of hiding, of restraint, of carefully constructed walls, and now this moment of complete vulnerability and freedom. Tears welled in her eyes, but these were different from the ones she had shed on that Beijing stage. These were tears of relief, of release, of coming home to herself. She stood and gave a small bow, then another as the applause continued. Zoe was jumping up and down in her seat, whistling with 2 fingers in her mouth. Mr. Chen stood in the back, clapping steadily, his eyes glistening. As Lily walked off stage, students she had never spoken to reached out to touch her arm, to offer congratulations, to ask where she had studied. She smiled and nodded but kept moving, needing a moment alone to process what had just happened. In a quiet corner backstage, she found Professor Davis waiting for her. "I think that answers my question," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That was extraordinary, Lily. Truly extraordinary. I didn't decide until I was already playing," she admitted. "I started with the simplified version, but it didn't feel right. The most important performances of our lives are often the ones we don't have time to overthink," he replied. "You played from the heart. It showed." Before she could respond, a woman approached them, elegant in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. Something about her seemed vaguely familiar to Lily. "Professor Davis," the woman said. "I need to speak with Ms. Wong immediately." Professor Davis straightened, suddenly formal. "Of course, Dean Williams." "Lily, this is our Dean of Fine Arts." "That was quite a performance, young lady," the dean said, studying Lily with intense interest, particularly for someone who claimed to have only childhood piano lessons. Lily felt her cheeks flush. "I'm sorry for the misunderstanding." "No need to apologize," the dean interrupted. "But I would like an explanation. We haven't had a pianist of your caliber at this university in my 15 years as dean, yet you're enrolled as a computer science major with no music scholarship, no audition record, nothing in your file about this level of ability." Professor Davis stepped in. "It's a rather complicated situation, Dean Williams. Perhaps we could discuss this in your office tomorrow?" "Actually," the dean said, still looking at Lily, "I believe I know exactly who you are. Lily Wong. The Beijing International Competition 2018. You were the youngest finalist in the history of the competition." Lily's heart sank. Of course. Dean Williams would have been involved in the classical music world. Her past wasn't going to remain hidden any longer. Yes, she acknowledged quietly. That was me. I remember the reviews of your preliminary performances. They were calling you the next Lang Lang, and then I froze on stage and never performed again. Lily finished for her. Until today. The dean's expression softened slightly. Until today. When you played Rachmaninoff's Third, the very piece from that competition, flawlessly with more maturity and emotion than pianists twice your age. Lily didn't know what to say. This was all happening so quickly, the careful boundaries of her life dissolving around her. We need to talk about your future at this university, Dean Williams continued. Immediately. My office tomorrow morning at 9. As the dean walked away, Lily felt a wave of anxiety. What does that mean? Am I in trouble? Professor Davis laughed. Quite the opposite, I suspect. But let's not worry about tomorrow just yet. This moment belongs to you, Lily. You should go enjoy it. The rest of the showcase passed in a blur. Lily sat in the audience for the remaining performances, but she hardly heard them. Students she had never met before came up to introduce themselves. Music faculty members who had never noticed her before suddenly knew her name. By the time the event ended, all Lily wanted was quiet and space to think. She slipped out a side door, avoiding the crowd gathering in the main lobby, and found a bench in the small garden behind the Fine Arts building. The evening air was cool, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Lily took deep breaths, trying to process everything that had happened. She had faced her greatest fear, and discovered it no longer had power over her. She had revealed her true self after 7 years of hiding, and now everything was changing. There you are. Lily looked up to see Zoe approaching, 2 cups of hot chocolate in her hands. I thought you might be hiding out here, Zoe said, sitting beside her and handing her one of the cups. You okay? I'm not sure, Lily admitted. It all feels overwhelming. Well, you're kind of the talk of the entire fine arts department right now. People are looking up your old competition videos online. Did you know there's footage of you playing with the Shanghai Symphony Orchestra when you were 10? Lily groaned. Great, so much for my fresh start. Is that what these past 3 years have been? A fresh start? Or just running away? The question wasn't accusatory, just honest in the way that had made Zoe such a good friend. Both, I guess, Lily said after a moment. After the competition disaster, I couldn't face anyone in the music world. I was the prodigy who cracked under pressure. Coming to America, studying something completely different, it felt like the only way to escape that identity. And now? Now, Lily stared into her hot chocolate. Now I don't know. The dean wants to see me tomorrow morning. Everything's changing so fast. Would that be so terrible? Zoe asked gently. You were amazing up there, Lily. Not just technically good, but alive in a way I've never seen you before. Like you were finally being your full self. They sat in companionable silence for a while, sipping their hot chocolate and watching the stars. Finally, Lily's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and gasped. What? Zoe asked. It's my parents. Someone sent them a video of my performance. Are they upset? Lily scrolled through the long message, reading quickly. No. They're crying? My mom says they've respected my decision to leave music behind, but they never stopped hoping I'd find my way back to it someday. They're booking flights to come see me next weekend. Sounds like they still believe in you, Zoe observed. They always did, Lily said softly. Even after Beijing, they were the ones who suggested I take a break. But they never pushed me to quit completely. That was my decision. And now it's your decision what happens next, Zoe reminded her. The next morning, Lily arrived at the dean's office precisely at 9, still uncertain what to expect. To her surprise, Dr. Lin was there as well, along with Professor Davis and 2 other faculty members she didn't recognize. Lily, Dean Williams greeted her. Thank you for coming. Please have a seat. The atmosphere was formal but not unfriendly. Lily sat in the chair indicated, folding her hands in her lap to keep them from trembling. I'll get straight to the point, the dean said. After your performance yesterday, I made some calls to colleagues in the music world. Everyone remembers Lily Wang, the young star who disappeared after the Beijing competition. And now here you are. I'm not looking to return to that life, Lily said quickly. The competitions, the pressure. No one is suggesting that, Dr. Lin interjected gently. But we would be remiss as educators if we didn't address the extraordinary talent that you've kept hidden from us. Dean Williams nodded. We're prepared to offer you a full scholarship to transfer into our piano performance program, effective immediately. Dr. Lin has agreed to take you on as her personal student. Lily's mind raced. It was both her greatest hope and greatest fear, materializing in an instant. This is a lot to process, she said carefully. Yesterday was the first time I've played in public in 7 years. And it was magnificent, Professor Davis said. But no one is pushing you back onto the competition circuit if that's not what you want. There are many ways to have music in your life, Lily. Dr. Lin leaned forward. What we're offering is a chance to develop your gift in a supportive environment, to explore what music means to you now, as the person you've become. Not as the child prodigy, but as the thoughtful young woman sitting before us. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Could I double major? Keep my computer science studies too? The dean looked surprised but nodded. It would be challenging, but for a student of your abilities, certainly possible. I'd like some time to think about it, Lily said. To talk to my parents, to really consider what I want. Of course, Dean Williams agreed. But don't take too long. Talent like yours is rare, Ms. Wong. It would be a shame to keep it hidden any longer. As Lily left the dean's office, she felt lighter somehow, as if a weight she had carried for years had finally been set down. The path ahead was unclear, full of decisions and challenges, but for the first time in a long time, it was also full of possibilities. She walked across the autumn campus, leaves crunching beneath her feet, and found herself heading toward the old recital hall, where Professor Davis had discovered her true abilities. Mr. Chen was there, polishing the grand piano on the stage. I heard your performance yesterday, he said in Mandarin as she approached. You played like yourself again? Yes, Lily agreed, running her fingers lightly over the keys. I finally did. She sat at the bench and began to play, not Rachmaninoff this time, but a simple Chinese folk song her grandmother had taught her when she was very young. Before competitions and pressure and expectations, the melody filled the empty hall, sweet and clear and honest. It wasn't a beginning exactly, more like a continuation of something that had been temporarily interrupted. The music had always been inside her, waiting patiently to be expressed again. And now, whatever path she chose, Lily knew one thing with certainty. She would never silence that part of herself again.